Vai. Okay. Microfoni aperti.
Buon pomeriggio a tutti. Do you have the translation?
No.
No. Vediamo se c'è la traduzione. Chi fa la traduzione prova a dire qualche cosa. Provi adesso. Aveva la traduzione? Ok. Yeah? That's good. The volume? Is it
Too loud.
Ok. Adesso? Now? Ok. Sì, sono messo.
Speak some more.
Ok. Bene, dicevo, buon pomeriggio a tutti.
Yes.
Abbiamo qui oggi Craig Newmark. Penso che se siete qui saprete chi è, ma io ve lo racconto. Lui è un pioniere del web, un nerd, come si autodefinisce, che 22 anni fa a San Francisco fonda Craigslist. Craigslist è il primo e il più grande sito di annunci, un sito che fa 50 miliardi di pagine viste al mese, in cui, per chi non lo conoscesse, esiste anche in Italia, voi trovate i classified, gli annunci sul lavoro piuttosto che affitti di case, automobili. Il suo Craigslist ha cambiato il mondo e ha anche cambiato il mondo dei giornali, perché i cosiddetti classified, gli annunci, erano uno dei pilastri su cui, insieme alla pubblicità e alle vendite, si reggevano i giornali tradizionali negli Stati Uniti e nel mondo. Craig Newmark è qui perché è una persona che ha particolarmente a cuore l'idea della fiducia nell'informazione, della fiducia del giornalismo di qualità e della fiducia nel giornalismo di qualità. Avete visto questa frase con cui che dà il titolo a questo incontro, che dice a trustworthy press is the immune system of democracy, una stampa, un'informazione credibile, il sistema immunitario della democrazia. E Craig è famoso perché sostiene anche economicamente e finanziariamente molte iniziative focalizzate sul giornalismo di qualità. Adesso poi le andremo ad analizzare, gliele farò raccontare. Però allora io prima di tutto gli voglio chiedere qual è stato il momento in cui ha cominciato a rendersi conto che c'era una crisi di fiducia nel giornalismo e quando gli è suonato il campanello d'allarme.
Well, I think I started noticing in U.S. politics over the last 10 or 20 years, I would frequently see that sometimes politicians would say things which weren't true. They'd be encouraged to say things which weren't true by TV in the U.S., mostly in cable TV, but this was being considered acceptable. This seemed very wrong to me because as a stereotypical nerd, at least the nerd in the U.S., I'm very literal. I believe that you should not bear a false witness. And so when I saw this becoming acceptable, this really bothered me. And that really hit ahead when the U.S. newsman and satirist Jon Stewart started reporting on one of the cable news networks, which would very actively report untruly. He did a lot of that. And that's when I started thinking I should do something. I should learn a lot first, because I'm a news consumer. I only want news I can trust. I want news I can have good faith in. And after I started learning things, I started helping the people in journalism who are good at producing trustworthy news, news produced in good faith.
Quando uno dei motivi della crisi dei giornali è la motivazione economica, le difficoltà di finanziarie dei giornali, non si è mai sentito in colpa di avere portato via i classified dai giornali tradizionali?
Well, all the evidence nowadays says that our effect was very minor, if it existed at all. For some years now, I've been talking to newspaper economists who tell me that there is no evidence to support this. There is some very weak correlation. And remember, correlation is not causation. There is very weak correlation relative to Craigslist effects on the news. The people who know the economics, like Thomas Bechdel or Ken Doctor, Kelly McBride, Ellen Miller, they point to the decline of newspapers as something that started in the 1950s with the advent of electronic media, specifically TV. The current charts show that the true decline of newspaper revenues began as the big platforms started taking a great deal of the revenue, billions of dollars of revenue. And I don't know about you, but I don't think I look like much of a billionaire.
Non c'è dubbio che sia incominciata con la televisione, però è vero che un tempo i classified erano sui giornali e oggi i classified non ci sono più sui giornali. Però la cosa che a me ha colpito quando ho letto che cosa faceva Craig Newmark e quando l'ho conosciuto era questa sua dedizione, questa sua passione per il giornalismo e questa sua scelta di supportarlo. Qual è stata la prima cosa che ha fatto? Con chi ha iniziato a collaborare e a sostenere? Il primo passo?
The first journalistic effort I can remember doing was about 10 years ago. A guy named Jay Rosen from NYU, New York University, did something called newassignment.net. I made a contribution to that on faith. I had some idea something good would happen from it, but I wasn't really sure. And it was a good experiment. I think some things were learned, but that was about it. Afterwards, I wasn't sure. Years later, I supported some fact-checking efforts, like at PolitiFact or the Center for Public Integrity in Washington. But I had a sense that the right things weren't beginning to happen because there wasn't enough interest. And for sure, I didn't understand the issues. Without my knowing, I was getting trained in journalism basics over 10 years ago, and it's only been in the last 2 or 3 years that I've learned more about how the newspaper business works. And that reminds me how much that I'm an outsider. Again, I consume news, I don't help produce it. I want news that's produced in good faith that I can trust.
In questo uno dei finanziamenti che Newmark ha fatto è stato di finanziare al Poynter Institute, che si trova a St. Petersburg in Florida, una cattedra in etica del giornalismo. E partiamo quindi, poi vorrei arrivare al dibattito di che cos'è oggi lo stato del giornalismo in America, il dibattito, Trump e tutto il resto, ma vorrei capire perché ha deciso di finanziare una cattedra universitaria in etica del giornalismo. Cioè, qual è il problema etico che vede nel giornalismo oggi?
Okay. Ethics, that just refers to a code of behavior about acting in good faith, in trust. That's why lawyers and doctors have codes of ethics, so that we can trust them to do what they do, that they maintain high standards. Part of the Poynter Institute effort was also to help seriously start the Poynter International Fact-Checking Network. The idea with the International Fact-Checking Network, led by Alexios Mansardis, who is at this festival, the idea is that there's going to be websites acting in good faith who are still going to make mistakes, who need those mistakes caught. A bigger problem is that there are websites, news organizations that don't act in good faith, and that we need the fact-checkers to catch them out. The idea, in part, is that there are no arbiters of truth. There's no telling you who the winners and losers are, but it is a system of trust but verify. A news organization can say it's going to act in good faith, but we do need fact-checkers to make sure that they actually are acting in good faith.
La International Fact-Checking Network di cui parla, che è appunto al Poynter Institute, è un'iniziativa che è nata nell'autunno del 2015, quindi circa un anno e mezzo fa. E tra le altre cose è interessante perché fa training per imparare a fare fact-checking, oltre a proporre modelli. In questo, qual è secondo te lo stato del giornalismo in America oggi?
Okay. In the U.S., I see that recent events, recent elections, have had the cloud has had a silver lining. Journalists are remembering that they're supposed to be acting in good faith, telling us what's really going on, rather than just pursuing profits. As a result, we're seeing high-quality news organizations do an even better job, like the Washington Post or the New York Times. We are also seeing these new efforts giving greater strength and power to people in news organizations who want to do better, who want to act in good faith, even if their boss tells them otherwise. I'm thinking of Jake and Brian at CNN. That's something that's a pleasant surprise. And over the years, I've casually met people from other publications, like the Wall Street Journal, who really want to report on the news accurately, and they're looking for ways to gather power so that they can do that. I don't have good advice. As a nerd, I know very little about internal organizational power plays, but it seems to matter. So overall, I see more and more journalists who want to do the right thing and who seem to be figuring out how to do the right thing, even if their boss is telling them to put profits over fact-checking.
Torno al fact-checking. Il fact-checking è qualcosa che ci sembra necessario, indispensabile, in tempi in cui si presentano i fatti alternativi, le verità alternative. Il fact-checking è necessario in tempi in cui ci troviamo in un mondo in cui ci sono le fake news, la politica è molto poco, diciamo, seria, per usare un eufemismo. Però io chiedo questo: ha fiducia che il fact-checking sia una cura, oppure in un dibattito pubblico così diviso, in cui prevale la partigianeria, questa hyper-partisanship, non pensa che anche il fact-checking non riesca a Cioè chi crede nei fatti alternativi, chi non crede nei giornali tradizionali, se il New York Times o il Washington Post fanno fact-checking non è importante perché viene da loro.
Okay. I think fact-checking is a critical part of the solution for trustworthy journalism. First, we have to define what we talk about when we say good faith or trustworthy journalism. That's the role of the Trust Project back at Santa Clara University in the US. And it's a lot about having an ethical code and committing to follow through with that ethical code even when mistakes are made. Fact-checking is the watchdog function required so that even when we trust news organizations to act on the honor system, someone still has to check things. Now, the fact-checking has to be transparent so that the fact-checkers can be checked to make sure it's a good fact-checking system. Beyond that are two other parts. We need the news platforms to seriously consider what the fact-checkers are saying. For example, I'd like to go to Facebook or Google or Twitter, maybe Apple News, and I would like to click a button which says, only show me news that where the news organization has promised to act in good faith and where the fact-checkers are saying, yes, they are acting in good faith. No, this is a very simple-minded engineering solution because I'm one, very simple-minded, and two, I'm an engineer, and three, I'm a nerd. And in addition to this, what we need to do is to have ad networks and advertisers adopt a code of ethics. For example, an advertiser's code of ethics might state that they will not place ads with news organizations who are careless of the facts, who present alternative facts. Or that might also include advertisers won't advertise on hate sites, they won't advertise on racist sites or misogynist sites. The idea is to enlist all parties, because in a way, this is a bit of a world emergency. With democracy, we need to make smart decisions, and we can only do that with trustworthy information. I'm also urging, and I'm on a bit of a tangent, we do also need mechanisms to protect journalists against harassers, bullies, and worse. So I think all news organizations should protect their reporters, even online, even in trolling and harassment. And I further feel that news organizations should protect each other against harassment. I don't know how to get started with that, however.
Ha accennato prima al Trust Project. Craig è per esempio tra i finanziatori alla Santa Clara University, c'è un Markula Center for Applied Ethics che ha un progetto che si chiama Trust Project in cui si sta lavorando a far sì che come si può riconoscere per esempio su Google nel meccanismo di ricerca su Google la differenza tra un articolo di qualità e un articolo non di qualità. Naturalmente Google non può essere un giudice che dice questo è un buon articolo e questo non è un buon articolo. Devono esserci dei meccanismi di trasparenza che permettono di riconoscere le cose. Vi faccio un esempio, le cose su cui sta lavorando questo progetto Trust Project è per esempio di rendere trasparente in un articolo, aggiungere dei dati che permettono al lettore di identificare chi è che il giornalista che scrive, qual è la sua biografia, come può essere raggiunto e quindi come gli si possono fare eventuali contestazioni, critiche, richieste di correzioni, chi ha passato l'articolo, dove è stato scritto, qual è l'organizzazione a cui appartiene, come viene categorizzato quell'articolo e così via. Allora sono tutti elementi che possono possono essere dei metadati che si aggiungono a un pezzo in maniera che l'algoritmo del motore di ricerca li possa riconoscere e portare in alto i pezzi che hanno maggiore credibilità perché hanno maggiore trasparenza di fronte al lettore. Yeah, please.
Well, Mario is much smarter than I am. Remember that I'm simple-minded. The Trust Project basically has some guidelines where a news organization can commit, can promise to say, we're going to act in good faith, we're going to be trustworthy, and when we make a mistake, here's how we're going to fix it.
Yeah.
And so the news organization, when they publish, included in the article are links to their ethics code, their corrections policy, and so on. And I, as a relatively naive news consumer, will say, okay, honor system. But then I'll take a look at what the fact checkers say, and if the fact checkers say, hey, over the past year, this news organization has published 1,000 things which aren't true, and they don't fix them, then I might think, I don't want to see them. And then I would hope, as the terms and conditions or the social contract between me and Google or me and Facebook, I could click a button which says, hey, I don't want to see stories from news organizations which are not acting in good faith. Which is to say, the news platforms are not being the arbiters of truth, not at all. Trust Project is not being an arbiter of truth. The fact checkers themselves are just pointing out individual problems and maybe coming up with a total, but it's up to the individual news consumer to say, hey, what I would say is only show me stuff when they're acting in good faith, when they say they're trustworthy and they behave in a trustworthy way. It's okay if someone else wants to click a button which says, show me everything. Although that person and I will probably not vote the same way.
A proposito di questo, oltre al Trust Project c'è un progetto nuovo, vedevo che prima qui c'era Jeff Jarvis della City University di New York, un progetto che è sostenuto tra gli altri da Craig, che si chiama News Integrity Initiative, che è stato lanciato questa settimana, giusto? Con un fondo importante di 14 milioni di dollari. E vedevo che l'ultimo post sul blog di Craig era proprio per raccontare questa iniziativa. Cioè, puoi spiegare che cosa c'è di nuovo in questa iniziativa e perché ci credi?
Yeah. Well, the new aspects of the initiative, from one perspective, it's to consolidate a lot of the good things happening in journalism right now. The idea that we can all work together to say, hey, here's what we mean by trustworthy, good faith journalism. Here's how we're going to create watchdogs for that. Here's how we're going to fund the development of tools to make it a lot easier to check facts. Right now, it's hard to check facts, and it would be great if there were tools which would allow news organizations to check facts together. Fact-checking is expensive in money, it's expensive in time, and I have hope for the first draft coalition along those lines, as long as other efforts, including one, I think it's at Le Monde. So that's the fact-checking aspect of things. We also want to be a means by which we can work with the platforms, Facebook, Google, and so on, so that they will help people like news consumers. They will help us figure out what is trustworthy news and what is not, simply by, like I said before, helping us see the trustworthy stuff and helping us to avoid the untrustworthy stuff. And also, this effort is working with ad networks, reminding them that they should help out with trustworthy journalism, because if an advertiser network puts someone's advertisement in a website that's not trustworthy, or maybe is a hate site, well, that hurts their client. So advertising networks have a strong financial interest in supporting trustworthy, good faith journalism, and we're seeing that play out now with sleeping giants. We're seeing it now playing out in YouTube. So the idea is that multiple parties are now, for the first time ever, coming together to have an idea of what trustworthy, good faith reporting is, and then starting to actually do something about it. I don't think that's ever happened before. I'd just like to add, like I did before, newspaper reporters of all sorts, are now at risk in a lot of places. In the US, it's mostly harassment, bullying, threats, and only one act of violence that I know about. But throughout the world, journalists are sometimes active targets of military. So we do need to work together to protect journalists, but that one requires knowledge that I don't have.
Proteggere i giornalisti sembra quasi una cosa, in un momento in cui il giornalismo per una parte importante della società è diciamo, non molto di moda ed in ribasso, l'idea di proteggere i giornalisti non so quanto sia popolare. Ma per esempio l'Italia è al 77° posto nella classifica della libertà di stampa, e questo accade perché è il paese probabilmente in Occidente con il maggior numero di giornalisti che vivono sotto protezione della polizia per via delle minacce della mafia, della criminalità organizzata. Che se ci pensiamo è un dato impressionante. Craig, se vedete fin dall'inizio, ci ripete sempre una cosa: un giornalismo in buona fede, un giornalismo che sia credibile, che sia degno di fiducia. Io però gli voglio chiedere, quanti cittadini pensa che abbiano la sua stessa preoccupazione? Lei pensa che la maggioranza, tu pensi che la maggioranza degli americani, che è il tuo paese, vogliano un giornalismo in buona fede, o spesso e volentieri invece preferiscono credere al giornalismo che gli dice quello che gli piace e che dà sfogo alla propria pancia, alla propria rabbia, alla propria idiosincrasia?
Okay. I have a lot of confidence that most Americans and most people everywhere want news that they can believe in. They may not think about it much because, to a large extent, we've given up on it. But there are a lot of people who remember, like I do from Sunday school, the commandment which says, "Thou shalt not bear false witness." We heard that when we were very young. We heard that we should treat people like we want to be treated from very young. And when you remind people of that, sometimes that works. There are people who feed on anger and hate, and who want nothing but feeds on that anger and hate. But I think that's a very small number of people, and that there's always far more people of goodwill than people who are motivated by hatred.
Non mi fa piacere che la pensi così, è tranquillizzante. Perché pensavo, per esempio, che Donald Trump 4 giorni fa aveva fatto un'apertura ad Assad e al regime siriano. in questi mesi ha sempre detto che bisognava collaborare in Siria con Putin e con i russi. Ieri sera ha cambiato idea, questa notte ha fatto un attacco missilistico sulla Siria. In 4 giorni ha cambiato completamente idea e posizione. E colpisce perché, diciamo così, certi temi, per esempio, di coerenza sembrano quasi scomparsi dal dibattito pubblico. Dico una cosa curiosa che forse che è curiosa per l'Europa, che forse a un americano non è chiaro. In Europa ci sono molti movimenti, in Italia c'è un movimento che si chiama Lega Nord, Northern League, c'è il Movimento 5 Stelle, Marine Le Pen in Francia, che apprezzano Putin, apprezzano Assad e che hanno ripetuto che gli sembra che Trump sia un modello. Si sono trovati questa mattina, quando si sono svegliati, che dovevano scegliere con Trump e Assad non possiamo stare questa mattina. Ci sembravano tutti dalla stessa parte e invece ci troviamo che Trump ha tirato i missili su Assad. E quindi si sono trovati in grande difficoltà perché si trovano in questa situazione. Allora, il rispetto dei fatti e della coerenza, non gli sembra che in una parte di mondo e nel dibattito pubblico sia qualcosa che quasi è passato di moda?
Constancy, consistency in different ways, and respect for facts. I think that's important to most people, but at least in the US, that doesn't seem to be an important subject. That is that in Twitter, for example, or Facebook, I will see frequently, in the case of Trump saying one thing, and then him saying a different thing. And this apparently is starting to matter to his supporters because we see that in declining ratings for Trump. So that may be a phenomenon, but very frequently in Twitter somebody will dig up a tweet of Trump's saying how terrible it was for the president, Obama, to take off time to golf, and then someone will retweet the old tweet and then show a new tweet showing Trump playing golf a lot. So consistency doesn't matter to a significant portion, I think, of any public if the individual involved, if they think that individual is speaking for them, whether they're really speaking for them or pretending to.
Posso chiederti com'è la tua dieta informativa? Cosa leggi? Come ti informi? Cosa fai la mattina per informarti? Cosa leggi?
Okay. I read a great deal of news feeds, including news, general news, world news, technology news, a couple of comics, including Dilbert. Dilbert is an American computer industry parody, which is pretty much all true, although exaggerated. And I do read, in particular, the New York Times and Washington Post. I am very impressed with the new directions of the Washington Post, and I've spoken with some of the principals, particularly Marty Barron and Margaret Sullivan, and they seem to be very committed to good faith journalism. So that's great. And through the day, I'll still wind up reading other things. I wind up reading things that aren't what I expect, like from Glenn Reynolds' Instapundit. And then now and then, someone from the Weekly Standard or National Review Online will surprise me. In particular, National Review and the Weekly Standard seem to be, they're trying to actually be conservative, rather than being opportunistic with a veneer of conservatism, which is pretty impressive because in the US it's often dangerous to waver too far from the party line. We see that in the daily antics of the White House. I think Steve Bannon was just removed. He was just removed from the National Security Council, which is a shock. Meanwhile, Jared and Ivanka seem to grow increasingly in power, and I'm guessing the generals grow in increasing power, which is a surprise.
Yeah. Segui qualche newsletter?
I do a few. I lose track to what I'm subscribed to because they just kind of pop in my mailbox. In the US, there's something called Political Wire by Tegan Goddard. He takes the best of the political press, writes a very short version of it, quotes a very short version of it, sends it out, and I get a great deal of news for very little, and that works out for me. Oh, I do listen to a number of blogs, although my favorites are the funny ones, like The Bugle, which is produced out of London. And there's Welcome to Night Vale, which is kind of like public radio in the Twilight Zone. Yeah, I don't know how many of my American idioms translate over, but given that I'm ancient of years, a lot of my TV goes back to the 1950s.
Guardi la televisione?
I watch TV, and I love TV. For example, recommend The Expanse on the Science Fiction Channel. And despite the flaws of Homeland on Showtime, and it has a lot of flaws, they are doing a very good subplot on the mass manufacture of fake news using sock puppets and so on. So that subplot is very valuable, and we need to see an excerpt of it that we can show to each other.
La mia ultima domanda, poi se ci sono domande, prendiamo domande da qui, è un po' diversa e ha poco a che vedere con l'informazione. Ho letto sulla tua biografia su Craigslist che il tuo hobby è osservare gli uccelli e gli scoiattoli. E allora volevo sapere cosa potremmo imparare dagli uccelli e dagli scoiattoli.
I won't know until I start talking to them and they start answering me. I do love seeing them. I don't know if people here know, but there are pigeons here. And that was very exciting, seeing a couple of them. I understand there are more pigeons in Rome and Venice. All I know is that I'll be at home sitting in my office, and I'll see some extraordinary bird. Sometimes we have bright bluebirds, either Steller's jays or scrub jays, and it's a very pleasant surprise to be treated by seeing them. We also have rather large hawks, red-tailed hawks. What they like to do is to look at me and stare at me for a while, thinking that I'm looking very well marbled and that I might make a fine meal. Fortunately, they don't cooperate with each other. Otherwise, I'd have a problem. Oh, we also have raccoons. They like to come during the evening and tap on our door because they know we have food.
Ci sono domande? Grazie.
Hi, I'm here. Hi, Craig. Thanks for being here. I'm Ernst Pfout, publisher of The Correspondent, a Dutch online journalism platform, and I have a question about comments. A lot of news sites are shutting down their comment sections. Some of them are actually investing in comment sections, like the Washington Post, who has a weekly roundup of the best reader comments. I was wondering, what are your thoughts about the relationship between comments and interactivity in journalism and the trustworthiness of the press?
Okay. First, I'm hearing a lot of really good things about De Correspondent. I've been chatting with Jay Rosen from NYU about it, so that's of great interest, and he's representing your interests well. About comment sections, or frankly about any form of user-generated content, that is that, I really like having them around, but having been involved in customer service for discussion boards, it is very difficult to keep them civil, particularly if you have one that gets a lot of traction. You may get hit by sock puppets and botnets of great malice. So I think comment boards will be much more important, a form of true democracy, when we have the means for preventing outright trolling and abuse and sock puppets. At some point, we may require verified identities of people so that someone is accountable for what they say. There's a lot of anonymity issues here, and I want to add that we always will need places on the web where we can be anonymous. We will always need places on the web where whistleblowers and dissidents can be anonymous. So we need a good mixture of accountability and anonymity. So on the kind of discussion board you're talking about, I think people should be allowed to use whatever alias they want, but they should still be accountable for what they say, particularly if they're harassing people. I didn't mention that I've made a large contribution to Wikipedia, actually 2 large contributions, but one of them is to help Wikipedia do something about harassment normally attacking women, because there aren't enough women editors in Wikipedia, and harassment is one of the problems. So again, I think comment boards are important, but until we deal with the harassment issue, perhaps with accountability, they're going to be painful. And over 20 years, I've seen a lot of things in discussion boards I wish I could not see.
A proposito di Wikipedia, più volte hai sostenuto progetti di Wikipedia, ma per esempio in particolare questo qui sul harassment fatto sui profili di donne, che tipo di progetto è? Che cosa si può fare per evitare questi comportamenti? Cioè, in pratica cos'è il progetto?
Okay. I don't want to disclose too much about security countermeasures, because in my experience, when I talk about that publicly, what I say will wind up in a black hat discussion board. That is, and this has happened, the bad guys, the evil hackers, when they hear someone say something about a countermeasure, it shows up online and people start working about countermeasures. It is pretty broadly known, for example, that you can filter for particular kinds of words, but that just means the bad guys use different terminology. Sometimes you can do filters about the origins by address of bad comments, and sometimes you can look at the patterns involved of those addresses. That can be helpful even now, but a professional sock puppet or bad guy can work around that. So for the time being, I'm going to not annoy the Wikipedia people with my suggestions because they're smarter than I am. I will later on find out what they're doing and then ask them to share that with people who need the same techniques. It is an arms race, because when the bad guys start doing something, the good guys can implement countermeasures, then the bad guys implement countermeasures, and we need to do better.
Grazie. Ci sono altre domande? Craig, ti faccio un'altra domanda io. Abbiamo visto che i tuoi interessi sono stati appunto la cattedra in etica del giornalismo al Poynter Institute, Wikipedia, il Trust Project, la News Integrity Initiative. C'è poi anche un sostegno che hai dato a ProPublica. Quanto pensi che sia importante il giornalismo come...
Well, in addition to supporting the principles of good journalism, I should support some good journalism directly. That's not my main thing, but I should do that, and I should do more of it.
No, sì, in questo caso quanto pensi, perché ci sono forme di giornalismo come ProPublica o come il Marshall Project per esempio negli Stati Uniti che si occupa di parlare di tutto quello che è la politica della giustizia, la politica carceraria, di denunciare le storture del sistema giudiziario americano, che sono progetti non profit. Quanto credi che possa essere una strada il giornalismo non profit?
Okay, I think not-for-profit journalism, at least in the US, is a necessary part of the journalistic ecosystem. I think it's only part of it, and there's a special set of ethics surrounding that, because I can't expect to influence the coverage of anything I fund. Excuse me, I need to take a break. I need to take a break.
Okay.
Okay.
It's okay. Yeah. Okay. Niente, ma we have the conclusion. It's okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Craig. Thank you. Mi hanno tolto il volume. Grazie a tutti. Concludiamo qui. Buon lavoro, buon pomeriggio. Ci vediamo più tardi.
So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Davide Casati. I work for Corriere della Sera, and here is Richard Gingras. Richard has worked